The steak was overpriced, the wine pretentious, and my wife was practically glowing every time her boss spoke. I sat there cutting my ribeye into precise squares, listening to Torrin explain why his logistics empire was revolutionizing defense contracting. Again. Maris has been instrumental in streamlining our semiconductor shipments, Drake said, his hand lingering on my wife's shoulder a beat too long. Her innovative routing strategies have increased our efficiency by 30%. Maris beamed. Drake gives me so much creative freedom. It's refreshing to work with someone who appreciates professional chemistry. I chewed slowly, watching this performance. Drake was 46, silver at the temples, wearing a suit that cost more than my monthly salary. The kind of guy who said synergy unironically and probably had his assistant schedule his bathroom breaks. Professional chemistry, I repeated. That's one way to put it. Maris shot me a look across the candlelit table. Silas, don't be negative. You're just jealous of our professional relationship. You're right, I said, taking another bite. I'm also jealous of his hairline. Drake laughed, but his eyes stayed cold. Silas works in logistics too, doesn't he? Different sector, of course. Freight coordination, I said. Nothing as glamorous as defense contracts. I just make sure trucks show up on time. Every cog matters in the machine, Drake said with the condescension of someone who'd never loaded a truck in his life. My phone buzzed. LinkedIn notification. I almost ignored it, but something made me check. Message from Hazel Venton. The name meant nothing to me, but her profile showed she worked in law enforcement. The preview made my stomach drop. Excuse me, I said, opening the full message. Mr. Corvin, I hope you don't mind me reaching out. I saw Torrin tagged in your wife's recent posts. I was married to Drake for 3 years. He used the same line on me about professional chemistry. Same expensive gifts. Same hotel for business trips. Same manipulation playbook. Run. I stared at the screen, rereading every word. The restaurant noise faded to background static. Silas? Maris was looking at me with concern. You look pale. I turned my phone toward her, letting her read the message. Her face went through several expressions: confusion, recognition, then something that might have been panic. Who is this woman? She asked, but her voice had gone quiet. Says she's Drake's ex-wife. Drake leaned forward, trying to see the screen. Hazel? Oh, that's unfortunate. She's been struggling with some mental health issues since our divorce. Obsessive behavior, you know. I should have warned you she might reach out. Obsessive how? I asked. Delusions about our marriage. She convinced herself I was unfaithful, created elaborate fantasies about other women. Very sad, really. Maris nodded quickly. That explains it. Some people can't handle divorce gracefully. But I was watching Drake's face, the practiced sympathy, the careful word choices. This wasn't the first time he'd given this explanation. What hotel? I asked. What? Drake blinked. She mentioned a specific hotel. Which one? Silas. This is ridiculous, Maris said. You're not seriously entertaining this woman's accusations? The Meridian downtown, Drake said smoothly. I use it for client meetings. Hazel became fixated on it during our marriage, convinced I was meeting other women there. Pure paranoia. I nodded, filing that away. And the gifts? Jewelry, mostly. I believe in showing appreciation for exceptional work. It's a management philosophy. Show me, I said to Maris. Show you what? The jewelry he gave you for your exceptional work. The silence stretched. Other diners chatted around us, oblivious to the tension at our table. Maris fidgeted with her napkin. I don't wear expensive jewelry to dinner, she said finally. But you have it? Silas, this is embarrassing. You're making a scene over some disturbed woman's message. I looked at Drake. You said she's mentally ill. What kind of mental health issues? I'm not comfortable discussing my ex-wife's private medical information, he said, but something flickered in his expression. Of course not. That would be inappropriate. I cut another piece of steak. Like giving expensive gifts to married employees. Silas. Maris's voice carried a warning. What? I'm just trying to understand the professional chemistry you two share. It sounds very intimate. Drake's composure cracked slightly. I think there's been a misunderstanding. My relationship with Maris is purely professional. Then you won't mind if I contact Hazel directly. Get her side of the story. That's not necessary, Maris said quickly. Drake explained the situation. This woman is obviously unbalanced. Maybe she's trying to help. I took out my phone again. Only one way to find out. Don't, Maris said, reaching for my hand. Please, this is humiliating. For who? She didn't answer. Drake was studying his wine glass like it held the secrets of the universe. The waiter appeared, asking about dessert, and we all declined. The mood was thoroughly ruined. I should get the check, Drake said. No need. I've got it. I signaled the waiter. Least I can do after such an enlightening evening. We paid in uncomfortable silence. Outside the restaurant, Drake made his excuses and disappeared into the parking garage. Maris and I walked to our car without speaking. You embarrassed me, she said finally. Did I? Or did that message embarrass you? Some crazy woman contacts you with lies about my boss, and you immediately assume the worst. What does that say about our marriage? I unlocked the car. It says I pay attention. The drive home was silent except for the radio, but my mind was racing. Hazel Venton, law enforcement, specific details about hotels and gifts. Either she was an incredibly dedicated stalker, or she was telling the truth. At home, Maris went straight to the bedroom. I sat in my study, staring at Hazel's message. Then I typed a reply. Ms. Venton, thank you for reaching out. I'd like to know more about your experiences with Drake. Would you be willing to talk? The response came within minutes. I've been waiting for someone to ask. Can you meet tomorrow? I have documentation. Documentation. That was either very good news or very bad news. Where and when? Coffee shop on 5th Street. 2 p.m. I'll be wearing a blue scarf. And Mr. Corvin? Be careful. Drake is more dangerous than he appears. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark, thinking. Maris was probably right. This could be nothing more than a bitter ex-wife trying to cause trouble. But something about Drake's reaction bothered me. The way he'd smoothly deflected every question, the practiced explanation about Hazel's mental health. And Maris. Her panic when she'd read the message, the way she'd tried to stop me from responding. If this was just nonsense from a disturbed woman, why was she so worried? I went to bed, but sleep didn't come easy. Tomorrow I'd meet Hazel Venton and find out what kind of documentation she had. Part of me hoped it would be nothing, paranoid ramblings that would put this whole thing to rest. But a bigger part of me suspected I was about to learn things about my wife that I wasn't prepared to hear. The coffee shop on 5th Street was busy with the lunch crowd when I arrived. I spotted Hazel Venton immediately, mid-40s, professional but tired-looking, wearing the promised blue scarf. She'd claimed a corner table with a clear view of the entrance. Mr. Corvin? She stood as I approached. Thank you for coming. Call me Silas. I sat across from her, studying her face. She didn't look unhinged. Stressed, maybe, but her eyes were clear and focused. I know this is awkward, she said, reaching out to a stranger about their marriage, but I couldn't stand by and watch Drake do to your wife what he did to me. Tell me about that. She opened a manila folder. Drake and I were married for 3 years. He's a master manipulator, Silas. Everything he does is calculated. She slid a photograph across the table. Drake, younger, arm around a woman who must be Hazel. They looked happy. This was taken during our honeymoon. 6 months later, he was cheating. But he was so subtle about it, so good at making me doubt myself. I started to think I was going crazy. The hotel he mentioned, the Meridian? Room 412. He keeps it on permanent reserve. Tells his targets it's for client meetings, but it's his seduction suite. Same routine every time, expensive dinner, walk through the lobby like he's showing off his success, then upstairs for champagne and whatever comes next. My stomach tightened. How do you know all this? Because I hired a private investigator. After Drake convinced me I was paranoid, I needed proof I wasn't losing my mind. She pulled out more photos. These were taken over 6 months. Different women, same hotel room, same pattern. The photos showed Drake entering the Meridian with various women. Professional looking, attractive, all roughly the same age as Maris. In one shot, he was handing a small jewelry box to a brunette in the lobby. The gifts, I said. Always jewelry, usually earrings or a bracelet. He has them buy it themselves using his corporate card, then presents it like a personal gesture. Makes them feel special while keeping his hands clean if anyone asks questions. Has Maris been to this hotel? Hazel hesitated. I don't have photos of her specifically, but I know the signs, Silas. The way she looked at him in those LinkedIn posts, the way she talks about their professional chemistry. I've heard it all before. I stared at the photos. Why didn't you expose him during your divorce? I tried. But Drake's lawyers painted me as an unstable ex-wife trying to destroy him out of spite. He's very good at controlling the narrative. Plus, he had connections in law enforcement that made things complicated. You said you work in law enforcement. I did. Internal affairs, actually. Until Drake's friends made it clear my career would suffer if I kept pushing. So I transferred to a different department, kept my head down, and watched him continue the same pattern with other women. Why risk reaching out now? She leaned forward. Because I found out something that changes everything. Drake isn't just a serial cheater, Silas. He's using these relationships for something much worse. What do you mean? His defense contractor credentials were revoked 2 years ago. Did you know that? I shook my head. He was caught trafficking classified intel to foreign buyers, lost his security clearance, his military contracts, everything. But somehow he's still operating, still moving sensitive materials. How do you think that's possible? The implication hit me. He's using someone else's credentials. Someone with legitimate access to defense logistics. Someone who trusts him completely and wouldn't question unusual shipping requests. Maris. Your wife has the clearance Drake lost. Her company handles the shipments he can no longer legally touch, and she probably has no idea what's really in those containers. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. You're saying my wife is unknowingly helping him commit crimes? I'm saying Drake specializes in finding vulnerable women in positions of power and manipulating them into doing what he needs. The affairs are just how he maintains control. She pulled out more documents. These are shipping manifests I obtained through unofficial channels. Look at the patterns. The papers showed dozens of shipments over the past year, all routed through Maris's company. The contents were listed as standard electronics, but the destinations raised red flags, shell companies in countries with loose export regulations. This is circumstantial, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. Maybe. But add it to the hotel receipts, the jewelry purchases, and the fact that Drake's been systematically seducing women in logistics positions across 3 states, and a pattern emerges. 3 states? You're not the first husband I've contacted, Silas. There was a woman in Houston last year, another in Phoenix. Same playbook, same hotel chain, same outcome. By the time their husbands figured out what was happening, the women were completely under Drake's influence. What happened to them? Divorces, destroyed families, and the women? They either stayed with Drake until he was done with them, or they disappeared into new identities when the federal investigations got too close. Federal investigations? The FBI has been tracking Drake's network for months. They know he's still moving classified materials, but they can't prove how. If they figure out Maris is his conduit, she'll go down with him. I sat back, overwhelmed. This morning I'd thought I was dealing with a cheating wife. Now I was looking at evidence of international trafficking. What do you want from me? I asked. Help me stop him before he destroys your wife the way he destroyed me, and before the FBI arrests her as a co-conspirator. How? We need to get into Drake's files, find proof of what he's really shipping. But more importantly, we need to document his pattern of manipulation. Show that Maris is a victim, not a willing participant. And if she is a willing participant? Hazel's expression softened. Then at least you'll know the truth. Either way, you deserve better than being kept in the dark. I looked at the photos again, at the evidence spread across the table. This is insane. I know, but insane doesn't mean untrue. We sat in silence while I processed everything. Finally, I asked, "What's the first step?" "Find out if Maris has been to the Meridian. Hotel records, credit card statements, anything that proves she's following Drake's pattern. Once we establish that, we can start building a case." "A case for what?" "For saving your marriage, if possible, or for protecting yourself if it's not." I gathered the photos and documents. "I need time to think about this." "Don't take too long. If the FBI moves first, Maris won't have any options left." Outside the coffee shop, I sat in my car for 20 minutes, staring at Hazel's evidence. Part of me wanted to drive home, confront Maris directly, demand the truth. But another part knew that would just give her time to prepare lies. Instead, I drove to my office and called my friend Nate Brantor. If I was going to investigate my own wife, I'd need help from someone I trusted completely. "Nate, it's Silas. I need a favor." "A big one." "What kind of favor?" "The kind that might end my marriage." There was a pause. "I'll be right over." Nate arrived at my office with a laptop bag and a concerned expression. We'd known each other since college, and he'd built a successful IT consulting business by being both brilliant and discreet. If anyone could help me navigate this nightmare, it was him. "Okay," he said, settling into the chair across from my desk. "Tell me everything." I laid out the whole story. The LinkedIn message, the dinner confrontation, my meeting with Hazel. Nate listened without interruption, occasionally making notes on his tablet. "So, you think Maris is either cheating or being manipulated into criminal activity?" he asked when I finished. "Maybe both. I need to know what's really happening before I make any accusations." "Smart. Accusations without proof just give people time to cover their tracks." He opened his laptop. "What kind of access do we have?" "To what?" "Maris's digital life. Email, credit cards, phone records. If she's involved with this Drake character, there'll be electronic evidence." I felt uncomfortable with the idea of spying on my wife, but the photos from Hazel were still fresh in my mind. She uses our joint credit card for everything. I have access to those statements. "Good start. What about her work computer?" "She brings it home sometimes, leaves it on the kitchen counter when she's charging it." Even better. If Drake is using her for illegal shipping, there'll be documentation on that machine. Emails, shipping manifests, payment records. "Isn't that illegal? Accessing her work files?" Nate shrugged. "Depends how you look at it. If she's your wife and the computer is in your house, the legal boundaries get fuzzy. Besides, if she's involved in trafficking classified materials, the FBI will be looking at those same files eventually." He had a point. "Where do we start?" "Credit card records. Let's see if she's been to this Meridian hotel." I logged into our bank account and pulled up the last 6 months of statements. Nate leaned over my shoulder as we scrolled through the charges. "There," he said, pointing at an entry from 3 weeks ago. "Meridian Hotel downtown, charged to the room, not just parking or the restaurant." My chest tightened. Could be a business meeting. Could be. What time was the charge posted? 11 p.m. That's late for a business meeting. We kept looking. 2 more Meridian charges over the past 3 months, both in the evening hours. But what really caught my attention were the jewelry purchases. 3 different high-end stores, all within a few days of the hotel charges. "The pattern Hazel described," I said. Looks like it. But we need more context. When did these hotel visits happen? Was Drake traveling? Were there legitimate business reasons? How do we find that out? We look at her work files. If these were real business meetings, there'll be calendar entries, email confirmations, meeting notes. That evening, I waited until Maris was in the shower before approaching her laptop. My hands shook as I opened it, feeling like a criminal in my own home. But the screen was password protected. Try her birthday, Nate had suggested when I'd called him. Or your anniversary. People usually pick something memorable. Neither worked. I tried variations, our wedding date, her mother's birthday, our address. Nothing. Then I remembered something. Last year, Maris had adopted a daughter from foster care, a 14-year-old named Emma, who'd been bounced between homes for years. Maris had said it was the most meaningful thing she'd ever done. I typed Emma 2009, the year Emma was born. The screen unlocked. My guilt deepened as I navigated through her files. This felt like the ultimate violation of trust. But then I found the folder labeled Drake Projects, and my moral qualms took a back seat to necessity. The folder contained hundreds of emails between Maris and Drake, going back 8 months. I started with the most recent and worked backward. Maris, need to expedite the Seattle shipment. Client is getting anxious about delivery timeline. Can you reroute through Vancouver to avoid customs delays? D. Drake, Vancouver routing will add 3 days and increase costs by 40%. Are you sure the client wants that? M. Trust me. They're paying premium for discretion. The extra cost won't be an issue. D. I screenshot the exchange and kept reading. The emails showed a pattern of unusual shipping requests, routes that avoided major ports, destinations that made no sense geographically, cargo manifests that seemed deliberately vague. But it was the personal messages that made my stomach turn. Maris, dinner tonight was perfect. You looked beautiful in that blue dress. The earrings I picked out suit you perfectly. D. Drake. Thank you for such a lovely evening. I feel terrible about lying to Silas, but he wouldn't understand our connection. M. He doesn't deserve you. A woman of your intelligence and ambition needs someone who appreciates those qualities. D. Sometimes I think you're right, but leaving him would be complicated. There's Emma to consider, and the financial entanglement. M. We'll figure it out together. Trust me. D. I sat back, staring at the screen. There it was, in black and white. My wife was having an affair and planning to leave me. But there was something else in those messages that bothered me. References to Emma that seemed oddly clinical. I opened Emma's adoption file, which Maris had scanned and saved on the laptop. As I read through the paperwork, something jumped out at me. Emma's birth father was listed as Drake Torrin. My hands went numb. The daughter Maris had rescued from foster care was Drake's biological child. I called Nate immediately. You need to get over here, I said. Now. 20 minutes later, Nate was reading over my shoulder as I showed him the emails and adoption papers. This is bigger than an affair, he said. This is a long-term con. What do you mean? Think about it. Drake loses his security clearance, needs someone with legitimate access to continue his trafficking operation. He identifies Maris as a target, successful, ambitious, married to someone he can manipulate or eliminate. He seduces her, gains her trust, then plants his own daughter in her home to ensure long-term control. That's insane. It's brilliant. Emma becomes leverage. Even if Maris tries to leave, she won't abandon the daughter she's grown attached to. And if Drake ever gets caught, he can claim Maris was the mastermind while he was just a loving father trying to protect his child. I felt sick. So Emma is what, a pawn? Or a victim? Depends on whether she knows what her father is really doing. We have to help her. First, we have to help ourselves. If the FBI is really closing in on Drake's operation, Maris could be arrested any day. And if they think you knew about the trafficking, you could go down too. What do? We need more evidence, enough to prove Maris was manipulated, not a willing conspirator, and we need to find out exactly what Drake has been shipping through her company. How? We break into his files the same way we broke into hers. But first, we need to know where he keeps his real records. The shipping manifests on this laptop are sanitized. They don't show what's actually in those containers. I thought about Hazel's photos, the hotel room, Drake's predictable patterns. He's arrogant, probably keeps everything in one place where he feels secure. Like his office? Or his home, somewhere he can control access. Nate nodded. Then that's where we're going next. Breaking and entering? Are you serious? You want to save your marriage or not? I looked at the laptop screen, at the evidence of my wife's betrayal and manipulation. I want to save my wife. The marriage might already be over. Then we better move fast, because if Drake realizes we're onto him, both Maris and Emma are going to disappear. We didn't have to break into Drake's office. Hazel called the next morning with information that changed everything. I've been monitoring federal databases, she said. There's been activity around a property in Montana registered to one of Drake's shell companies. Remote location, perfect for hiding whatever he doesn't want found. What kind of activity? Helicopter traffic. Unusual for a property that's supposed to be vacant. And there are shipping records showing regular deliveries to a town 50 miles from the nearest major road. Nate looked up from his laptop. Montana makes sense. Close to the Canadian border, minimal law enforcement presence, easy to move things across without detection. Things like what? I asked. People, Hazel said quietly. The classified intel trafficking was just the beginning. My sources think Drake's expanded into human trafficking. The room went silent. I thought about Emma, about Maris, about how deep this conspiracy might go. We need to get to that compound, I said. Silas, that's not smart, Nate warned. If Drake's involved in human trafficking, that location is going to be heavily guarded. Then we call the FBI. With what evidence? Hazel asked. Everything we have is circumstantial. We need proof of what's happening at that compound before law enforcement will act. So what do you suggest? Reconnaissance. Get close enough to document what's there, then turn everything over to the authorities. That sounds like a job for professionals, not a logistics coordinator and an IT consultant. Maybe, but professionals take time to organize, get warrants, coordinate with local authorities. If Drake realizes he's being investigated, he'll clean house. Any evidence will disappear, along with anyone who could testify against him. I thought about Maris, probably at work right now, unknowingly facilitating whatever was happening at that Montana compound. How long would it take to get there? 12-hour drive, Nate said. But if we're doing this, we need to be smart about it. Surveillance equipment, communication backup, exit strategies. And we need to tell someone where we're going, Hazel added. If something happens to us, the investigation can't die with us. We spent the rest of the day planning. Hazel would stay in Dallas, monitoring communications and ready to contact federal agents if we didn't check in. Nate and I would drive to Montana, document whatever we found, and get out. That evening, I sat across from Maris at dinner, watching her push food around her plate. She'd been distracted lately, taking more calls from work, staying late at the office. Now I knew why. How's the Seattle project going? I asked. She looked up, startled. What? The shipping contract you've been working on. You mentioned it last week. Oh, fine. Just some routing complications. Anything I can help with? I know those northwest corridors pretty well. No, it's handled. Drake has specific requirements for this client. What kind of requirements? She hesitated. Discretion, mostly. High-value cargo, sensitive delivery windows. Sounds complicated. It is. But Drake trusts me to manage it. I nodded, filing away her responses. Either she was a better liar than I'd thought, or she really didn't understand what she was facilitating. "Where's Emma tonight?" I asked. "Studying at the library, big history test tomorrow." Emma had been living with us for 6 months, and I'd grown genuinely fond of her. She was smart, funny, and seemed to be thriving in a stable environment. The thought that she was being used as leverage in Drake's scheme made me angry in ways I couldn't fully express. "She's a good kid," I said. "The best. I can't imagine life without her now." There was genuine emotion in Maris's voice. Whatever else was happening, her feelings for Emma were real. That would make the truth even harder to bear. The next morning, Nate and I left for Montana. The drive gave us time to go over our plan and discuss what we might find. "Best case scenario," Nate said. "It's just a storage facility. We document whatever's there and turn it over to the FBI. Worst case? We find evidence of human trafficking and have to figure out how to help the victims without getting ourselves detained or worse." The Montana landscape was beautiful, but desolate. Miles of empty highway, snow-capped mountains in the distance, and very few signs of civilization. Perfect for hiding illegal activities. We reached the area around midnight and found a motel 20 miles from the compound. The next morning, we drove to within a mile of the target location and hiked the rest of the way through dense forest. The compound was larger than I'd expected. Multiple buildings, a helicopter landing pad, and what looked like dormitory-style housing. Through binoculars, we could see people moving around, too many people for a legitimate business operation. "Guards," Nate whispered, pointing to men with weapons patrolling the perimeter. "And workers," I said, focusing on a group of people loading trucks near the main building. "They don't look like employees." The workers were thin, poorly dressed, and moved with the resigned efficiency of people who had no choice in what they were doing. My stomach turned as I realized we were looking at trafficking victims. "We need to call the FBI," I said. "Not yet. We need more documentation." Nate had brought a camera with a telephoto lens. For the next hour, we photographed everything we could see: the buildings, the vehicles, the license plates, the faces of both guards and victims. Then something happened that changed everything. A black SUV pulled up to the main building, and Drake Torrin got out. "There's our proof," Nate said, snapping photos as Drake walked toward the building. But Drake wasn't alone. 2 other men emerged from the SUV, and I recognized one of them from Maris's work Christmas party, her regional manager, Tom Bradley. "This goes deeper than we thought," I said. We watched for another hour, documenting who came and went. The operation was clearly sophisticated: multiple vehicles, regular helicopter arrivals, and a level of organization that suggested significant financial backing. Then, we heard dogs barking. "Time to go," Nate said. We packed up quickly and started back toward our car. But the barking was getting closer, and we could hear voices shouting orders. "They found our trail," I said. We ran. The next 20 minutes were the longest of my life, crashing through underbrush, jumping over fallen logs, trying to stay ahead of pursuit that seemed to be gaining ground. My lungs burned and my legs felt like rubber, but the thought of what would happen if we were caught kept me moving. We reached the car just as the first guard dog broke through the tree line. Nate had the engine started before I got my door closed, and we sped away with the sound of shouting behind us. "Did they see the license plate?" I asked. "I don't think so, but we can't go back to the motel." We drove straight through to Denver, only stopping for gas and to upload our photos to a secure server. By evening, we had documented evidence of Drake's trafficking operation and proof that Maris's company was involved. "What now?" Nate asked as we sat in a Denver hotel room reviewing our pictures. "Now we save my wife." But first, I had a phone call to make. Hazel answered on the first ring. "We found it," I said. "Everything you suspected and worse. But we're going to need federal help to shut it down." "I'm already on it. I've been in contact with an FBI task force that's been tracking Drake. They're very interested in what you found." "And Maris?" If we can prove she was manipulated, she might avoid prosecution. But Silas, you need to understand, even if she's legally cleared, your marriage might not survive this. I looked at the photos on Nate's laptop, evidence of a conspiracy that had destroyed my trust and endangered my family. I know, I said, but I have to try. The FBI moved faster than I'd expected. By the time Nate and I returned to Dallas, federal agents were already coordinating raids on Drake's known properties. Agent Sarah Martinez, the task force leader, met us at a downtown office building to review our evidence. "This is exactly what we needed," she said, studying our photos. "We've been tracking Drake's network for months, but we couldn't prove the connection to the Montana operation." "What about my wife?" I asked. "That's complicated. The shipping records show she facilitated multiple illegal transfers, but the email evidence suggests she was manipulated. We'll need her cooperation to build a case against the bigger players." "Will she be arrested?" "Depends on how willing she is to testify. If she helps us take down Drake's entire network, we can probably work out a deal." "And if she refuses?" Agent Martinez's expression was grim. "Then she goes down with them." I drove home that evening knowing I was about to destroy my marriage, but I also knew I didn't have a choice. Maris was in danger, whether she realized it or not, and Emma was being used as leverage in a criminal conspiracy. Maris was in the kitchen when I arrived, helping Emma with homework. The scene was so normal, so domestic, that I almost lost my nerve. "How was your business trip?" Maris asked. "Educational." I sat down across from them. "Emma, could you give us a few minutes? I need to talk to your mom." Emma looked between us, sensing tension, then gathered her books and headed upstairs. "What's wrong?" Maris asked. I opened my laptop and turned it toward her, showing the photos from Montana. "I know about Drake." Her face went through several expressions: confusion, recognition, then something that might have been relief. "How long have you known?" she asked quietly. "About the affair? A few days? About the trafficking? Since yesterday." "Trafficking." She looked genuinely surprised. "What are you talking about?" I showed her more photos: the compound, the workers, Drake's arrival. "This is where your shipments have been going, Maris, not to legitimate clients." She stared at the screen, her face growing pale. "I don't understand." "Drake said we were moving electronics for defense contractors." "Drake lost his security clearance 2 years ago. He's been using your credentials to traffic classified materials and people." "People?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Human trafficking. The FBI estimates 47 victims at the Montana location alone." She sat back, looking stunned. "I had no idea. I swear, Silas, I thought it was legitimate business." "What about the hotel meetings, the jewelry, the affair?" Tears started flowing. "That's different. Yes, I've been seeing Drake. Yes, I've fallen in love with him, but I never knew about any criminal activity." "Emma is his daughter." She froze. "What?" "The adoption records list Drake as her biological father. The whole thing was orchestrated to give him leverage over you. That's impossible. Emma was in foster care because her parents couldn't take care of her. Her mother couldn't. Her father placed her there deliberately, then waited for the right woman to rescue her." Maris stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. "You're saying Emma is part of some conspiracy?" "I'm saying Drake used her to manipulate you. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" She was quiet for a long time, staring out at our backyard. Finally, she turned back to me. "What do you want me to do?" "Cooperate with the FBI. Help them take down Drake's network. Protect Emma from being used as leverage." "And us? Our marriage?" I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in months. She was still beautiful, still the woman I'd fallen in love with. But something fundamental had changed between us. "I don't know if there is an us anymore, Maris, but I know Emma doesn't deserve to be caught in the middle of this. I never meant for any of this to happen." I believe you. But it did happen, and now we have to deal with the consequences. She nodded slowly. What do I need to do? The next morning, Maris met with Agent Martinez and agreed to full cooperation. She turned over all her files, emails, and shipping records. She also agreed to wear a wire for one final meeting with Drake. It's dangerous, Agent Martinez warned. If he suspects you're cooperating with us, he might react violently. I understand, Maris said, but I need to look him in the eye when he finds out I know the truth. The meeting was arranged for that evening at Drake's office. FBI surveillance teams positioned themselves around the building while I waited in a command vehicle, listening to the audio feed. Maris, Drake's voice came through clearly. You sounded upset on the phone. What's wrong? I know about Montana. There was a long pause. What about Montana? The compound, the trafficking, the people you've been moving through my shipping network. I think there's been a misunderstanding. We're moving electronics, not people. I've seen the photos, Drake. I know what you're really doing. Another pause, longer this time. When Drake spoke again, his voice had changed, colder, more calculating. Who showed you these photos? Does it matter? It matters a great deal, because whoever's been feeding you information has put both of us in a very dangerous position. The only danger is what you've created. You think you're innocent in this? You've been facilitating these shipments for months, Maris. You signed the manifests, approved the routes, took the payments. In the eyes of the law, you're as guilty as I am. Because you lied to me. I protected you, gave you plausible deniability. But if you're talking to federal agents, that protection disappears. Are you threatening me? I'm explaining reality. We're partners in this, whether you want to admit it or not. The only way either of us survives is if we stick together. What about Emma? What about her? She's your daughter. You placed her in foster care just so you could manipulate me into adopting her. Drake laughed. Emma is a means to an end, just like everything else. Did you really think it was coincidence that a perfect child became available just when you decided you wanted to adopt? I could hear the pain in Maris's voice when she responded. She's not a tool. She's a child who deserves a family. She has a family. She has you. And as long as you remain cooperative, she'll continue to have you. And if I don't? Foster care is full of tragic stories, Maris. Children who disappear into the system, never to be seen again. That was enough. Agent Martinez gave the signal, and FBI agents stormed the building. Drake Torrin, you're under arrest, came through the audio feed, followed by sounds of struggle and shouting. Maris, are you okay? Agent Martinez's voice. I'm fine. Is it over? This part is. But we'll need you to testify when this goes to trial. I sat in the command vehicle, listening to my wife's voice, feeling a mixture of relief and sadness. We'd stopped Drake, saved Emma, and probably prevented dozens of other people from being trafficked. But our marriage was over. Some victories come at a price you're not prepared to pay. The federal raids happened simultaneously across 3 states. Drake's Montana compound was shut down, 47 trafficking victims were rescued, and a network of corrupt officials was exposed. The story made national news for weeks. Drake was charged with human trafficking, conspiracy, and violating the Arms Export Control Act. His trial was scheduled for 6 months later, with Maris as the prosecution's star witness. Emma took the revelations about her father surprisingly well. I always knew something was wrong with him, she told me one evening as we sat in my study. He visited me in foster care a few times, but he never felt like a real dad. More like someone checking on an investment. How do you feel about Maris adopting you? Like I finally have a real family, even if you and Mom are getting divorced. The divorce proceedings were amicable, all things considered. Maris kept the house, I kept my business, and we shared custody of Emma. The girl had been through enough trauma without losing another stable home. I never meant to hurt you, Maris said as we signed the final papers. I know, but some things can't be undone. Do you think you'll ever forgive me? I thought about it. I forgive you for being manipulated. I understand how someone like Drake could twist your emotions and judgment, but I can't forgive the lying, the sneaking around, the willingness to plan a future with him while still married to me. She nodded sadly. I understand. The affair might have been forgivable, eventually. But the deception about Emma, about the business, about everything, that broke something that can't be fixed. 6 months later, I sat in a federal courtroom watching Drake's trial. He'd aged considerably during his time in custody, the polished charm replaced by the desperate look of a man facing life in prison. Maris testified for 3 days, detailing how Drake had systematically manipulated her into facilitating his criminal network. Her testimony was devastating, and Drake's lawyers couldn't shake her story. When the verdict came back, guilty on all counts, I felt a sense of closure I hadn't expected. Outside the courthouse, Hazel Venton approached me. "Thank you," she said, "for believing me, for taking the risk to investigate. A lot of people are alive today because you were willing to act. Thank you for reaching out. That LinkedIn message saved my life even if it ended my marriage. Sometimes the truth is painful, but it's always better than living a lie." I drove home to my new apartment, a smaller place but one that felt honest. Emma was waiting with homework that needed checking, and we settled into our evening routine. My phone buzzed with a LinkedIn notification. For a moment, my heart rate spiked, remembering the message that had started this whole nightmare. But this one was different. A connection request from someone I didn't recognize, with a simple message. "Saw the news about the Torrin case. Thank you for your courage in exposing the truth." I smiled and accepted the connection. Sometimes LinkedIn messages were exactly what they appeared to be. Emma looked up from her math homework. "Dad, are you okay?" "Yeah, kiddo, I'm okay." And for the first time in months, I actually meant it. The truth had cost me my marriage, but it had also freed me from a life built on lies. Drake was in prison, the trafficking victims were getting help, and Emma was safe. Some prices are worth paying. I closed the laptop and helped Emma with her algebra, thinking about fresh starts and second chances. The future was uncertain, but at least it was honest. That was enough.